What's going on, Summoners? I'm Kangas, here with another set of Korean builds, this time on patch 11.7. If you're looking to stay up to date with all the newest trends, then we got you covered here today. So hit that sub button, and let's just get right into it.
First up, let's run through the top lane. Our very first build for you is for an off-meta WARWICK top. That's right, I said WARWICK top, and this build is a pretty exciting one. For starters, you're going to run with Summoner Barrier. While many champions benefit from an aggressive summoner spell like Ignite or Exhaust for more combat power, the reason you want Barrier with WARWICK is because more effective health means much more chance of lifesteal through a fight. When you're below 25% health as WARWICK, your passive will heal you for 250% of the damage it deals, rather than the 100. Of course, being that low means that you're tightrope walking on a thin, dangerous line. So by having Summoner Barrier available, you have a shield ready to protect you. Rather than something like Summoner Heal, which could accidentally take you over that health threshold, the shield from Summoner Barrier means that you can technically stay below that 25% threshold and still get a big shield. And of course, that gives you some extra cushion so you don't immediately get bursted down. There's obviously going to be risks involved, and you'll tread a fine line between playing with death and simply running it down. So to help you run this playstyle right away, check out our website ProGuides.com, where a coach can walk you through how you should play it. We even have a discount on subscriptions with the code RANKUP2021, which will save you 20% off at checkout. For runes, you want to take Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Alacrity, Last Stand, Second Wind, Revitalize, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a situational defensive rune. The items are going to be Divine Sunderer, Defensive Boots, Titanic Hydra, Steric's Gauge, Sphere Visage, or a Dead Man's Plate, and then finally a Thornmail. This build makes you very difficult to fight against. Since WARWICK already has plenty of sustain built into the kit, you want to take Presence of Mind rather than Triumph. One of WARWICK's biggest issues when not jungling is that his Q's mana cost can get a little out of hand. This extra mana that the rune provides should help mitigate the issue though. Also, with this combination of Conqueror, Last Stand, and Revitalize, you're going to have a ton of assistance when you get low anyway. Extra damage and extra sustain go a long way, and you'll be able to fight your way out of really risky situations they'd have to run away from on other champions. Think about this one like Olaf, but with more focus on healing in place of consecutive axes. With nerfs to other tank mythic items, it's looking like Divine Sunderer might finally get its time to shine. This next build is for Yorick. For those of you who don't think that Trinity Force is cutting it, go ahead and give this one a try instead. The reason we're showing you this build is that his play rate is extremely low. Although Yorick might not be super popular right now, we believe he'll become a much more relevant pick following some big buffs, and if you want to get a head start on learning him, we got you covered. For runes, you want to take Grasp of the Undying, Demolish, Bone Plating, Overgrowth, Last Stand, Triumph, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a situational defensive rune. Then make sure to build Divine Sunderer, Defensive Boots, Steric's Gauge, Dead Man's Plate, Spirit Visage, and Death's Dance. First off, this rune setup is extremely powerful on Yorick. Divine Sunderer paired with Grasp of the Undying provides a ridiculous amount of sustain. The extra healing alongside Yorick's Q can make him rather oppressive to fight against. When put in a side lane to split push, it can be absolutely overbearing, even if you build Grievous Wounds against him. When players don't, it's so free for a Yorick player once they have their items completed. Running Demolish will also make your split push even more threatening if you get alone with those towers, and for items you obviously want Spirit Visage for either more healing, and Death Stance will buy you more time to try to fight your way out of tough situations. Like WARWICK, running Last Stand is going to increase your damage output in those longer fights. You'll naturally get low, but remember that you have a ton of sustain to help you survive for a bit longer and really milk out that rune. That'll wrap up our top lane builds, so make sure to look at the screen for a last recap of those ones. Next, let's move on to the jungle. One champion who recently started popping off again is Volibear. Following some nice buffs to help him out in his jungling, he's become an incredible pick in low elo and a decent one in high. Volibear is great at clearing at neutral objectives specifically, and his ganks are actually pretty strong when you throw in a Turbo Chem tank. The extra movement speed makes him very difficult to get away from, but what if we made it even harder? Well, first let me run you through the runes and items. For runes, you want to run Predator, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, Ingenious Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, you're going to build Hail of Blades, then Rush a Bomb Cinder. The complete build will be Defensive Boots, Turbo Chem Tank, Steric's Gauge, Dead Man's Plate, Spirit Visage, and Gargoyle Stone Plate. With the changes to Turbo Chem Tank, you'll be a bit slower than before, but when you're running Predator, that can help alleviate this in two ways. One, you don't have to rely on only Turbo Chem Tank's cooldown, and you can alternate between the two to make sure that you always have something ready early on in the game. As you stack up Ingenious Hunter and lower the cooldown of Predator, you can instead use both simultaneously for even more speed. Volibear's biggest struggle is getting in, and similarly to Udyr, having items and runes to help get around these issues makes the pick so much stronger than they would be otherwise. There is absolutely no running away from this bear, because you'll even have Chilling Smite alongside Nimbus Cloak to ensure that your enemies can't get away. Since we're talking about junglers though, I do have a question that everyone can answer. Even if you're not a jungler, you're a victim to the fact that as a player, you can still get smited. So do you think that Challenging Smite or Chilling Smite is stronger, and why? I know it's subjective and situational, but I still want to know your thoughts. Anytime I jungle, I always take Chilling Smite just because it feels easier to pull off and a little more high impact right away, but I do think that Challenging Smite can get a little out of hand if the jungler actually knows how to use it correctly. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. While Eclipse is a hot item on Xin Zhao, another item that you might want to consider is Stride Breaker. Unlike the former, you might find yourself a lot less brittle by changing up your item choice. The best part is that Xin Zhao is actually a champion who uses all of the stats that it provides rather well. With this build, you get to play Xin Zhao more like a bruiser instead of an early game glass cannon who eventually bulks up. For runes, you'll want to run Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, Transcendence, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For the build, you'll purchase an Ember Knife as your starter, and then you go Stride Breaker, followed up by Defensive Boots, Steric's Gauge, Black Cleaver, Dead Man's Plate, and a Death's Dance. And in case you're wondering, there's no really big AP builds out there just yet, but we are keeping our eyes peeled. Nonetheless, this one is a very nice build, and while you don't get the movement speed bonus from Eclipse, you do get that dash and extra slow with Stride Breaker. Enemies that flash away from your initial engage are not going to be happy when you slow them again as you charge forward with Stride Breaker's active effect. Challenging Smite will also provide you with some extra damage, and Nimbus Cloak will still provide some extra movement speed to make sure that you can stay on top of your target. This build provides an adequate amount of support, and kiting Xin Zhao with this setup is far from easy. And that'll wrap up the jungle build, so just like before, here's the list of all of them on the screen. Now, moving on to the mid lane. Next up, we got a new Sylas build. A lot of times, a new build includes only one single item or rune to really change things up, and this is one of those cases. The item in question this time is Mana Mune, or rather Muramana once you finish stacking it up. Sylas' playstyle complements the item quite well as he's weaving in tons of basic attacks as well as spells into his combos. Since Everfrost is a natural part of his build, he'll also get a ton of extra value because you're going to end up with a gigantic mana pool. A quick note, you can either run Ignite for kill pressure in easy lanes, or run Teleport if you want to play it safe. For runes, you run Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Tenacity, Last Stand, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Double Adaptive Force, and a situational defensive rune. For items, start off with Tear of the Goddess, then build into Everfrost, Ionian Boots, Mana Mune, Zhonya's Hourglass, Cosmic Drive, and either Void Staff or Morellonomicon. Everfrost, Mana Mune, and 2 Biscuits is going to equal a total of 1,560 extra bonus mana. With it, you're looking at a gigantic mana pool to absolutely abuse Muramana's passive with. Sylas recently received buffs to his passive as well, increasing the bonus attack speed that it provides. You'll be able to burst down enemies fast with the help of this. Another great part of this is that you mix up your damage as well. You'll add some physical damage, meaning that building a ton of MR isn't necessarily going to fix your enemy's issues. And another flashy mid lane build that we'll talk about today is actually Singed Mid. With the infamous Flash and Ghost setup, you can hunt down foes and menacingly throw them behind you. And to those who don't play against a lot of Singed, that is a lot more terrifying than it sounds. To make him work in the mid lane, you'll want to run these runes: Predator, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Biscuit Delivery, Time Warp Tonic, Double Adaptive Force, and a situational defensive rune. Predator's bonus movement speed ties into about half of Singed total gameplay. Hunt down enemies, and then press E on them. The damage that follows is obviously rather high, as his poison literally is quite suffocating. Although you can run Ingenious Hunter, Ravenous Hunter's Omnivamp provides an incredible amount of value even with the recent nerfs, especially in teamfights when you're dealing damage to several opponents at once. For items, you'll build Shirelia's Battle Song, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Riley's Crystal Scepter, Demonic Embrace, Cosmic Drive, and Zhonya's Hourglass. Finally a champion using Shirelia's, but it's still not a support. Nothing screams League of Legends more than making an item viable in the wrong way. The bonus movement speed active, as well as actually the stats, make plenty of sense on Singed. Most importantly though, your mythic bonus stat is movement speed. Each legendary item that you purchase will make you faster and even harder to catch. Cosmic Drive, meanwhile, is another great item because not only does it make you faster, it also gives you a huge amount of bonus ability haste. You'll be able to cast your E as well as your ultimate so much more. Ghost, Shirelia's Battle Song, bonus move speed from items, and of course Predator mean that your opponent's chances of escaping are next to none. And that'll wrap up our mid lane build, so take one final look at the screen for a recap. Next up, let's run through the bot lane. SAMIRA has made her way back to Summoner's Rift. She wasn't long for too long anyway, but we're here with an alternative build yet again. It's a simple change that incorporates a few different items, but they really do change up her playstyle. First of all, for runes, you'll want to run Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Bloodline, Cut Down, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter. For runes, you run Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a situational defensive rune. The changes come with the items. Build Immortal Shield Bow, Defensive Boots, Essence Reaver, Navori Quick Blades, Infinity Edge, and Lord Dominic's Regards. Essence Reaver and Navori Quick Blades are the new ones to the kit here. First up, the former is stronger because of her short Q cooldown. You'll get plenty of work done with constant Spellblade procs, and the stat line is obviously pretty good too. Bonus attack damage, ability haste, and a crit chance makes plenty of sense on SAMIRA, who has pretty long cooldowns on her W and E. And for that exact reason, Navori Quick Blades is another great option. Every time you crit, you reduce the current cooldown of your basic abilities. While reducing the cooldown of your Q, which already has a short one, might not seem like a big deal, but you're still looking at a noticeable DPS increase there. However, the biggest effect this item has is that it reduces the cooldown of your W and E significantly. Even without a takedown, you can realistically cast your dash multiple times with the help of quick blades. W's incredibly long cooldown is one of the weaknesses of the ability. You basically have a Yasuo wind wall, and being able to reduce the cooldown with crits means that you will have multiple opportunities to use it in a fight. What's normally an ability you only get to cast once is potentially something that you can activate multiple times if the fight goes long enough. This really catches your opponents off guard. Being able to use Samira's W twice in a fight makes it extremely frustrating for enemies who are trying so hard to take you out, especially if they save their key ultimates thinking that it was on cooldown. Well, that'll be it for the bottom lane. Again, we got a build up on the screen for you guys, so take one final look, and then we'll wrap it up with supports. And our final build for the day is a Zac support build that I have to talk about. While it's not typical for him to be played as a support, that's what makes it such a fun option when you want to throw your enemies off. Of course, if you get counterpicked in the jungle, you can always ask to play support Zac instead. You basically do the same thing anyway. Jump in and create some chaos. For runes, you'll run Aftershock, Font of Life, Bone Plating or Second Wind, Revitalize, Cheap Shot, Relentless Hunter, Cooldown Reduction, and 2 defensive runes. For items, you'll obviously start off with Relic Shield, and then build Sunfire Aegis, Defensive Boots, Zeke's Convergence, Spirit Visage, and either Knight's Vow or Thornmail. When you play Jungle Zac, you're obviously focused on ganking. Support Zac honestly isn't too different, and that's why you're running Relentless Hunter. The constant pressure you can apply from the Fog of War is really oppressive. Disappearing from bot lane for a second, and you could suddenly be catapulting into the enemy mid laner and ruining their game. Even sitting in the bot lane bushes applies a ton of pressure in your 2v2. When your enemies don't have vision on you, there's zero certainty over whether or not you're charging your E to jump into the mix. The only real downside is that since you're playing support, you'll very rarely get to finish an entire build. However, if the games are dragged on, which they often are in low elo, you'll be able to scale up and have more impact than many of the other supports. And let's take a look at the support screen one last time before we wrap up.
That's right, y'all thought we didn't read your comments, but I saw how much complaining there was on the last couple of these. And the more you complain about standard champs and builds from Korea, the closer I get to putting Teemo in one of these videos. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video or learned anything new, remember to leave a like and sub to the channel. We got so much more amazing content coming out that I can't wait to share with you. That's it for today though, so as always, best of luck on the Rift. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.